Last video, I talked about P-1, which contains my personal favorite boss, Minos Prime. While P1 contains a fantastic boss, the level itself is rather barren. I mean, you can just jump off the side and get to the door within literally 5 seconds. But what if you couldn't do that? What if, instead of the spine vine in your way, the most difficult assortment of enemies and hazards halt your progress towards the boss door? Well, if you did that, you would end up with a little something called P-2. It is in my firm belief that P-2 is ultra kill at its peak. It combines everything that's great about the game, like music, storytelling, and of course being hard as fuck, and multiplies it by 37 vigintillion. The whole thing is so legendary and so iconic, from each individual room all the way to the final boss at the end. It is a tale of struggle, defiance, and death. So, let's dive into why P-2 is the best level ever made. After P-ranking P-1, you will feel very powerful. You have just overcome a major difficulty spike and fully completed Act 1. Now, all in your way is Act 2. Act 2's levels are much harder, longer, and with more complex enemies and environments. Although difficult, you have overcome much greater challenges. Because you have experienced finding a Prime Sanctum before, you know where to look. Tearing through the greed layer, you find a book recounting the story of Sisyphus. He was a king, but unlike Minos, he was not a peaceful one. Amassing an army of sinners in the angel's wake, he starts a war against heaven. His plan was to fight power with power and lead his people to freedom. Then, at the bottom of the page, the author wrote 11 words. If only we knew the suffering that would befall us next. After P-ranking 4-2, next up is a shot in the dark. This is Ultra Kill's only dark level, and like everything else in this game, it executes it very well. But we don't care about the level, we care about the challenge. The challenge is to not pick up the torch and experience the level in true darkness the way God intended. Breaking a crack in the wall and following the corridors within leads you to the actual best boss in gaming history, the mysterious Druid Knight and Owl. I love this thing, man. It's a cameo from Mandalore Gaming and Shammy, and it's probably the funniest thing ever put into a game. Anyway, after you kill Mandalore in cold blood, the golden tablet is left in his coffin. The tablet reads, "Within the pyramid lies the chamber of the feline and the rodent. Within the chamber lies a pool of clear water, but only those who wield the electric magic of the druids may find it." After completing this level and getting jump scared, you will learn what this riddle is referring to in the next level, 4-4. Instead of going left like you're supposed to, you notice the door on the right is slightly open, allowing enough room for your whiplash to get through. Grabbing the skull inside, you walk into the room and notice that this is what the tablet was talking about. This is the chamber of the feline and rodent, which in classic Ultra Kill fashion are both meme images. Using the electric railgun on the water, you hear a door open outside. Going back into the main hall, you see a new path. Walking down the stairs reveals something. A corpse. A massive corpse. This must be the remains of King Sisyphus. It's all covered in barbed wire and metal plating. And most unsettling of all, his head is completely gone. Before the body, there is a portrait of the man it once was, and a new weapon, the saw blade launcher, which is the alternative to the nail gun. In this chamber, we can only assume it was some sort of torture device used on Sisyphus before he was decapitated. On either side of this weapon are 2 portraits of Gabriel. It can again be assumed that he was the one to do the decapitating. This is a clear show of force from the angels, a clear message to anyone who aspired to be like Sisyphus. Heaven was merciless. Now with that fun and happy thought at the back of your mind, you press through the remaining 2 layers, making another stop to give Gabriel a piece of your mind. After noticing where the P2 door was located, there's nothing left to do but enter. As you fall into the second Prime Sanctum, you know exactly what to expect. You've done this before. Strolling through the city of raining blood, you mentally prepare yourself for the boss ahead. I mean, it can't be that bad. Holy shit! This room was affectionately dubbed the Weezer Room by the community for, reasons. Now, just because it's called the Weezer Room doesn't mean it's a joke. You've got 4 Siberai, 2 Virtues, and a Ferryman that would love to send you back to the last checkpoint. I would suggest setting a saw trap with that nifty thing you found in 4-4 and immediately nuking the Cerberus on their spawn. This should kill 2 of them and leave the other 2 very low. Keep the saw trap going as it will help with healing. You're going to need a lot of healing because the Virtues will not shut the fuck up. This room, the very first room, will take even a seasoned player several attempts on their first run. The soundtrack is a droning chord that wears down your nerves and presses on your ears. But as the ferryman falls, a very, very different soundtrack starts playing. Here's where shit gets real. Tenebroso Sangue might be the best non-boss track, period. This level, if the first room has to be a clue, will not be anything at all like its predecessor. Combined with this new song now playing at full force, this level is going to make all Gauntlet levels look like kitchen runs. It's going to take a difficulty spike and turn it into a difficulty mountain. This will be unlike anything you've seen before. Killing the virtues and moving onto the bridge, another swarm of enemies spawn. Again, the player has to manage not one, but 2 sentries, a swords machine, and some schism. Oh, and a blessed mind flayer. There are a lot of blessed enemies in this level, and they are used to force the player to kill enemies in a certain order, increasing the difficulty drastically. No, you can't break the idols anymore. You must ask God for permission this time. After working through the enemies, you proceed into the next chamber, where the Mind Flayer is still on your ass. In this very small corridor, you must fight a Cerberus and 2 street cleaners. Both are enemies that have always been accompanied by space in previous levels. If you don't know how to insta-kill either of these enemies, you're gonna have some issues, because the Mind Flayer is still there behind you. Now, you may be used to the Mind Flayer already. It's an annoyance for sure, but it's not gonna kill you. Sometimes the ball attack can actually be helpful for healing. Yeah, now there's 2 of them. This fucking room is the most annoyingly hard thing put into a video game. Mind Flayers in places like Cybergrind are hard enough, and having multiple on you makes it even harder. Now, you can't even hit them back. You have to deal with another sentry, some source machines, Orisas, and virtues, now with the threat of homing projectiles and lasers on you too. This room is of extra difficulty to me, because I always forget what arm I currently have equipped. I could look at the arm indicator, but the half second I spend looking away from the enemies has a good chance of getting me killed. Takeda, you're definitely not gonna watch this, but please add the current arm to the crosshair HUD, I beg. Complaining about skill issues aside, this room demands 110% of your concentration. I know it's common practice to increase your volume when playing P2 because of this room, as being able to hear the attacks coming is a major help when you have no idea where they're coming from. Me, even if I turn up my volume, I wouldn't be able to hear it because I have the music volume turned up too damn high. Can't complain though. After that mess, we get the double insurrectionist fight. This is my personal favorite because if you keep them on fire and use the SRS cannon effectively, you can ethically and responsibly turn them into a steaming puddle on the floor. Because they bleed so damn much, you literally can't even see your screen half the time. After this, we get another good room. This room is called the Spaghetti Tunnel. This room is very hard because the spaghetti hurts you. It deals damage when contacted, but will instantly kill any enemy that touches it. This is super useful, as you can use stuff that does knockback to instantly put the 2 virtues and sentries to bed. Also, if you don't kill the Maurice like this, we aren't friends. Now, the next room is definitely the hardest. Remember the blessed enemies from a few rooms ago? Yeah, they're back. This is referred to as the idled/blessed stalker room because there's a blessed stalker in it. Stalkers usually aren't central enemies, but this one's a bit of a unit. When enemies are blessed, they can't die, and this includes stalkers. This is genius because it puts your healing, which is something that is always in short reach of the player, under a threat. After dealing with the first spawns, which are strays, swords machines, and a ferryman, another much harder wave spawns. This is probably the coolest fight in the level so far. You're given a set of 4 sentries, 3 Cerveri, 3 virtues, and a blessed hideous mass. Why is this so cool? These enemies are all management enemies. You have to juggle sentry charges, virtue strikes, HM shockwaves, and its hook, and Andre balling on your corpse. When in this room, you are on a tightrope. But instead of the tightrope being slow and boring, you are moving around at Mach 12, trying to avoid and counter so many things. And I'll tell you, if you manage to hit a chargeback in this environment, you're gonna feel like Jesus Prime. After this room, there's just one left. As the music fades and you ride down the elevator, tension slowly builds. You return to the familiar architecture of Lust, with its screens and doors. Human technology. As you approach the final door, you are warned not to approach it. Completely disregarding this warning, we march into the Panopticon. As you touch the floor, you see what you were warned about. The Flesh Panopticon, a massive meat cube that is the vastly improved form of Flesh Prison. You can tell it's upgraded because the word is cooler. Similar to Flesh Prison, it has 3 attacks: a white flash followed by virtue beams that can go sideways now, a yellow flash followed by HM mortar shells that will turn you into a crater if you're not careful, and a purple flash followed by a black hole. Well, I guess Akita liked that one. These are not the only upgrades, however. The Panopticon has more health, and the minions are much stronger. Instead of being a swarm of weak enemies that can be dispatched with a single well-placed nuke, these are strong spotlights that completely disable all healing. This makes them the first priority. Fortunately, they can be killed with a single Knuckle Blaster plus Shotgun combo. With those out the way, it's time to work on the prison itself. Using the lessons you've learned from Flesh Prison, it can be killed quickly with Saw Blades and the Knuckle Blaster plus Shotgun plus Slam combo. After you've done significant damage to it, you notice the healing bar is low. You jump off to prepare to kill the eyes again, but they never come. Instead, you hear this enraged war cry.
This prison to hold me.
Then, just as suddenly as it spawns, it dies. A prime soul has formed.
A visitor. Indeed, I have slept long enough. The kingdom of heaven has long since forgotten my name, and I am eager to make them remember. However, the blood of Minos stains your hands, and I must admit, I'm curious about your skills, weapon. And so, before I tear down the cities and crush the armies of heaven, you shall do as an appetizer. Come forth, child of man, and die.
All I can say is, good fucking luck. This is Sisyphus, Warlord, Insurrectionist of Greed, currently the #1 danger to heaven, and to you. This is Ultrakill at a brand new, never seen before speed. Sisyphus is so fast, it completely changed the game. When Minos called out an attack, you had time to think and to process your next move. Sisyphus doesn't give you that luxury. You have to know instinctively how to act. Thinking is out of the question. The game is no longer about damage or health, but managing the limited resources at V1's disposal. The most important one being speed. Lose too much of it, and you suddenly become an easy target for Sisyphus to rack up insane amounts of damage. You're forced into this elegant dance of keeping speed, style, and stamina up as high as you can, while Sisyphus is right on your tail, waiting for you to make a mistake. And it is fucking exhilarating. It is very clear that this boss is similar to Minos, but it expands on what makes Minos great: the speed, the power of the attacks, and the feeling of facing an impossible challenge. To me, he will never be better than Minos, because I'm a sucker for that specific kind of storytelling, but it would be straight up false to claim that Sisyphus is not also one of the greatest bosses in the genre, if not in gaming as a whole. Returning to the boss itself, he has 4 main attacks. Similar to Minos, it is absolutely in the player's best interest to memorize all of them, but in contrast to Minos, he doesn't like to stay on your screen. This man literally teleports behind you, and you're gonna learn to hate it because the predictability of the extremely fast attacks goes straight out the window. Because Sisyphus has several dangerous attacks with no callouts, like a roundhouse kick, an overhead punch, and a ground pound where they teleport above your head. These attacks just add to the intense speed of the fight, and they will still hit like a truck with no forewarning. But that doesn't make hearing his called attacks a cause for celebration. You can escape, destroy, this will hurt, and be gone, are fully prepared to deliver the judgment that Minos could not. Speaking of Minos, another major difference between the two bosses is that all of these called out attacks, every single one, is parryable in some way, even in phase 2. This means you can fight him like he fights you, up close and personal. Parrying is the best way to keep health and stamina up, and as long as you're not getting thrown around, you won't lose much of them either. I mentioned that this fight ends up being like a dance, and oh boy, let's fucking dance.
So concludes the life and times of King Sisyphus. A fitting end to an existence defined by futile struggle. Doomed from the very start. And I don't regret a second of it.
You again conquered the toughest challenge in Ultra Kill. Sisyphus, the prison meant to hold him, and the level before it could not stop you from claiming victory again. As you go to the exit, all you're thinking is, how the fuck do I P-rank this? That's the fun part. You don't. Going through every room without dying a single time is a task that can only be described as Sisyphean. You will fail. A lot. I honestly don't understand how, in the natural progression of the game, a player is supposed to P-rank P-2. The increase in difficulty is so incredibly steep. I can only whimper for P-3. Total mastery of every room is required. You have to learn how to manage all of the enemies, have incredibly precise movement, and most importantly, not die once. And don't forget who's waiting at the end. But you've come this far. Not even Sisyphus Prime and all those who are there to guard him will stop you. Not this time. Not ever. Now with P2 behind you, you can appreciate Sisyphus' character almost as much as his boss fight. Starting with the motif in War, Sisyphus' boss song, you may have noticed the very different feel than the one in Order. In Order, the motif has hope left. Minos believes the fight can go on. He believes that he will get his revenge. Sisyphus, on the other hand, has lost hope long ago. He sees the pointlessness of it all. But in true spite of this, Sisyphus loves it. In his own words, he doesn't regret a second of it. This is reflected in the motif, as it really gives a feel of, it may all be over, but I do not give a single fuck. In the Ultra Kill universe, Sisyphus was forced to carry 3 boulders. His first was his punishment, after his death as a mortal. The next was his war against heaven, which caused his death in the afterlife. And his final boulder was you. After every reset, you heard the arrogant cry from Sisyphus. Again, like Minos, this is not meant to be arrogant. He knows he will never win. He can't. Every time he kills you, you come right back. But he also knows that as much as you are his boulder, he is yours. Both of you are facing an impossible task. The only difference is that you can come back. This makes Keep Him Coming almost seem encouraging. Sisyphus is testing you not just on your skill, but on your determination, just as he was tested for millennia in hell. This determination that Sisyphus had is what allowed him to begin a war against heaven. He was the shining beacon of the revolution, and when heaven came down to hell, it was met with a fierce, passionate, and violent resistance. And when Sisyphus inevitably died, the revolution died with him. Sisyphus lived for the thrill of the fight, even though he knew it was all in vain. This is even reflected in the name of the war, the Sisyphean insurrection. The word Sisyphean means denoting or relating to a task that can never be completed. I'm not sure if this is directly intended, but it is definitely true. The tale of Sisyphus, in both Greek myth and in Ultra Kill, is simultaneously incredibly depressing and uplifting. Sisyphus, and the level he's part of, is simply perfect. The weight of the world is on both of your shoulders, and you have the will to withstand. It is a perfect metaphor for the character of Sisyphus. Many in real life often feel like what they do is pointless. Maybe we should take a page out of Sisyphus's book and see the joy of the struggle, because even after all that has happened to him, endless struggle, war, and death, one must imagine Sisyphus, and all of us players, happy.